Slow morning for me. Okay, this is Breaking WEP in less than 60 seconds, the next step, and forms part of a stream looking at wireless cryptography, such as David Hutton's look at wireless cryptography yesterday. This seminar is presented by Eric Deans?
Teves.
Sorry?
Eric Teves.
Oh, well, he knows better. He's a researcher at TU Darmstadt and is looking at new PTW attack methods that can recover the secret key from WEP in less than 60 seconds. And I guess you're on.
Okay. Good morning, and sorry for the delay. This talk will be about breaking WEP in general. I will show you 3 attacks on the WEP protocol and how to use them efficiently. And we'll start with an introduction to WEP. What is it all? WEP is the protocol specified in the IEEE 802.11 standard, which is the default standard for wireless LANs. And the goal was to have a protocol which provides the same security as the wired security to a wireless system. The basic idea was, if you got a wired system, you are secure because somebody who tries to attack you must plug in his cable, and basically the same thing should be done with a wireless system, so that somebody who tries to access your network needs to have the correct key. And well, in 1999, they said that WEP had the following properties. It should be reasonably strong, and the only way to break it should be to brute force the secret key, which should be infeasible. But this wasn't really the case. So first, let's have a look at how WEP works. If you got a wireless LAN, you got a secret root key which all stations in the wireless LAN share. And every time a station tries to send a packet over the network, it has to know the root key, and it must choose somehow an initialization vector, which are just 3 more or less random bytes. Root key and this initialization vector, which should change at every packet, are then combined to a per packet key and feed it into an RC4 stream cipher, which generates a stream of pseudo-random bytes. Then you take a plain text of the packet you're going to send and add a little checksum to it, a CRC32 checksum, and prepend it to the packet. Then you are combining packet and the key stream produced by the RC4 stream cipher, and you get the encrypted packet, and you send the encrypted packet together with the initialization vector you choose to the other station. The other station can see the initialization vector. It knows the root key too, and it can therefore, again, generate the key stream and decrypt the packet by just XORing the key stream again to the packet. This is basically how WEP works. So what's interesting now, what do we need to send a packet? Do we really read the root key, which is usually secret? Well, that's not the case. It is enough to know an initialization vector, the corresponding key stream, and the plain text of the packet you're going to send. So after you have discovered a long enough key stream, the corresponding initialization vector, then you can at least send packets with arbitrary payload. You cannot decrypt every packet, but you can send packets into the network. And this is the first design flaw in the WEP protocol. And additionally, you can send every packet you have once received again and again. So this is called a replay attack. You can just sniff packets of the network and inject them later. For example, if somebody has sent a ping packet over the network, you can record it, you can send it back later, and it will be accepted again by the network and generate a response. And this works with RP traffic too. So after you have sniffed an ARP request, you cannot read it because it's encrypted, but you can send it again, and it will again generate a response. This can be used to generate high traffic on a network which is sparely used. So let's have a look at an example. Assuming we have chosen a 40-bit web key, cafe babe 42, and then stations could, for example, choose the following per packet keys. So the first 3 bytes are always somehow random, or at least mostly different, and the last bytes of the key are always constant. So you are sending a lot of packets with a lot of different keys, which are all very, very similar, which means that they all share a common suffix, but only the first 3 bytes of every key, which is used to encrypt the packets, are different. And that means that if you try to attack a single per packet key, as an attacker, you always know the first 3 bytes of the key, because this is the initialization vector, and this is transmitted in clear text. So let's have a look at the history how the WEP protocol appeared. In 1996, I could find some PowerPoint slides which defined how previous draft looked like. And in 1999, the final version of the IEEE 802.11 standard was released, which specifies how WEP works. And it took 2 years, and then WEP was totally broken by 3 cryptographic researchers, which could show that after you have captured 4 million to 6 million packets from a network, you are able to calculate the secret key. Which means that you need perhaps an hour to capture these packets, and after that you can easily compute the secret key of the network, and you can now decrypt and encrypt arbitrary packets and communicate with all other stations in the network. And in 2004, WEP was broken again. And now you only needed 500,000 packets sometimes to recover the secret key, which was much faster than the original attack, which needed mostly at least 4 million packets. And in 2005, WEP was broken again. And this is now another attack on WEP, which means that you can decrypt single packets without the need to discover the secret key. So after you have received a very short packet, you can decrypt the single packet without discovering the secret key by sending 128 times the length of the packet in bytes to the network, which is much faster than receiving 500,000 packets from the network and discovering the secret key. And in 2005, WEP was then broken again, and by BitTow and some other people who showed another attack which allows real-time decryption of web traffic. That means you need less than a second to decrypt a single packet by just redirecting the packet to the internet. So what BitTow could show is 2005 that you can rearrange packets using fragmentation, so and exchange the routing information in these packets, so that packets are now not sent to the real destination. They should go to their stand instead to you over the internet, which allows you to decrypt these packets. And this attack allows some other nice things too. And in 2007, finally, WEP was broken again by me and some other people from TU Darmstadt. And we could show that you just need 40,000 packets to discover the secret key of the network. And compared to 2001, this is now 100 times faster. And compared to 2004, this is now about 10 to 15 times faster. And this is currently the best publicly known attack for finding the secret key. And in this talk, I will show you 3 attacks. First one is the chop-chop attack, which allows you to selectively decrypt single packets very, very fast, faster than finding the secret key. I will show you the fragmentation attack, which allows you to do, for example, real-time decryption. That means you sometimes need less than a second to decrypt a packet. And I will show you the PTV attack, which allows you to discover the secret key of the network. First, the chop-chop attack. The attack is really nice because it has an interesting mathematical structure. What chop allows you is to decrypt the last E bytes of a packet by sending 128 times E packets to the network and looking at the responses of the network. The basic idea is the following. Every packet in a network has a checksum. And if you shorten a packet by 1 byte, it becomes most likely invalid because you have chopped off the last byte of the packet. What you now can do is, if you know the clear text value of the last byte, you would know how to correct the checksum in the encrypted packet to make it valid again. And so this can be used for an attack. So what you can do as an attacker, you can guess that the last byte of a packet you have received would be 0. Then you correct the checksum of the encrypted packet and you send it back to the network. And now 2 things can happen. One possibility is nothing happens, which means the checksum of the packet was invalid and the packet was discarded. Or the other possibility is the packet is relayed by the access point, which means that the checksum was correct. But if the checksum was correct, then your guess of the clear text was correct. So what you do is you guess last byte was 0, you send the packet and you see if the packet is relayed. The packet is relayed, okay, last byte was 0, and you can proceed with the next byte. And if the packet is not relayed, the checksum was invalid, and you start guessing that the last byte had value 1. And you correct the checksum again and see if this packet is relayed. So by selectively correcting the checksums and guessing the last byte of the packet, you can decrypt the last byte of the packet, and you can go on and decrypt the last E bytes of the packet by sending an average of 128 packets. Because the last byte has only 256 values, it will at least succeed after having sent 256 different packets with different corrected checksums. The basic idea behind that is that if you get a checksum, then the receiver will verify this checksum using this formula, and below there are only some polynomials, but the exact value of these polynomials doesn't really matter. And what you can do is you can find an equation which tells you how to correct the packet. So what you got is you got a packet P, and you can separate this packet into 2 parts. The left part Q and the rightmost 8 bits called P7. And this packet, because you have received it from a correct station, has a valid checksum. And then you can use this equation to get the value how to correct the checksum in the 1-byte shortened version, depending only on the last 8 bits of the packet and known values. But the exact method is not really difficult after you have implemented in a computer algebra system, and you can do it just easily in C2. So basically what we learned from that is that the checksum inside the packet doesn't really help you to protect the integrity of the packet, but it can be abused for very interesting attacks. For example, this chop attacks, which allows selective decryption of last bytes of packets. And by iteratively going through the last bytes, you can decrypt the whole packet. The next attack will be the fragmentation attack. And this attack now is completely non-mathematical. It's just a design flaw in the protocol. So basically, the protocol allows you to fragment packets. For example, you get a packet, the packet is too big to be sent in one piece, you can break it down into 2 packets and send them totally independently. And you encrypt every packet totally independently. And the information, if the packet is a fragment or not, is not encrypted and it's not protected. So we can use that for an attack. For example, we have a short key stream, which means that we can send packets with an arbitrary payload of 4 bytes, and we need another 4 bytes for the checksum. So we can now send these packets, or we can send 16 fragments. The protocol allows up to 16 fragments of a packet with 4 bytes of chosen plain text in each packet. And what happens is the access point will combine these fragments into one single packet because it can send larger packets, and will relay that packet. And if we capture the relay, we now suddenly know 68 bytes of key stream, which are 64 bytes, 16 times 4 bytes from the fragments we sent, plus the 4 bytes of the checksum of the plain text. So this can be used for discovering large key streams. The next attack you can do with that is you can do real-time decryption. After you have discovered a large key stream, you can generate arbitrary packets. And in IP packets, the routing information is only located at the beginning of the packet, the IP header, and it's routed according to the destination address. So what we can do is we can generate the first part of a packet and put some routing information in there, which means that the packet should be routed to us, for example, to our web server. And then we send this packet, which is just the beginning of a packet with routing destination our web server, and we can then send another captured packet we have received on the network as fragment number 2. So what happens is the access point will take both fragments, build a single packet out of these, and send that over the internet to us. Because both packets are valid, and we got no problem with encryption, decryption, because we are able to encrypt arbitrary packets, which includes this IP packet, and the other packet we have received is correctly encrypted too, because we get it over the valid network. And we don't need any mathematics or cryptanalysis skills for that. It's just a design flaw in the protocol. We can just edit the fragmentation information and therefore build new packets out of fragments. And this is nice because it allows us to decrypt a single packet in less than a second, because we just have to send one packet which contains the routing information that it should be sent to us, and then we have to inject a captured packet again and label it as fragment number 2. And this works very fast. Only problem is some vendors tend to implement fragmentation not so correctly, so this means this attack doesn't work on some buggy access points. Well, and there are some other tricks too you can do using this method to do other things like real-time decryption, like the chop choke attack or so. Last attack I got will be the PTW attack. Basically, what happened was in 2004, the best attack on WEP was the Correct attack, which allowed you to discover the secret key with about 500,000 packets sent and received. And this was possible, and because you can send about 800 packets, you can receive about 800 packets per second from a fast network, sometimes more. And so you need a little bit more than 10 minutes to discover the secret key. And in 2005, Andreas Klein showed analysis of the RC4 stream cipher, which is used in WEP, and he had a theory how to alternatively break that stream cipher in WEP-like modes. And in 2007, we started looking at this analysis, and in April we had first implementation of our attack finished, which was now able to attack WEP with only 40,000 packets. So what you could do with our tool was to discover the secret key of the network with just 40,000 packets, which means if it's a fast network, you can do it in less than 60 seconds. So what you do in our attack is you are injecting ARP packets back into the network you have once sniffed, and then you are reading the replies, and you can discover most of the keystream of the replies because ARP requests and replies are always constant in the first 15 bytes, and therefore you can rebuild the keystreams of these packets. And the exact number of packets depends a little bit on the exact structure of the key and how much luck you got on the, for example, it depends on the IVs which were chosen, but all methods which are currently implemented in access points usually tend to generate IVs which make it possible to decrypt the key with 40,000 to 85,000 packets received. So let's have a look at the stream cipher which was used in the WEP protocol. It was invented in 1987 by Ron Rivers, RSA Data Security, and it was kept as a trade secret and sold commercially to people which were interested in fast software stream ciphers. And in 1994, the source code of RC4 appeared on the Usenet, and from now on, RC4 was completely open. And it's very common in use, and it's very efficient, so you can implement it by just doing random access to memory and only 8-bit addition. That's everything you need to implement RC4, so you can do it on real small hardware, or even, and it's even fast on modern PCs. For example, it's used in SSL TLS. Source code of the cipher is really short. RC4 consists of 2 algorithms. Can you read that? Who can not read that? Okay. RC4 consists of 2 algorithms. First is a key scattering algorithm, which initializes the RC4 stream cipher from an arbitrary length key k, which can be somewhere between 8 bits and 2048 bits, and generates a more or less random permutation from this key. So RC4 is an internal state of a 256-byte array S, which always forms a permutation of the numbers from 0 to 255, and 2 integers E and J. And after this initialization has been done, you can generate a key stream of arbitrary length from these values by just repeatedly executing these operations, which will generate a key stream bitewise from that permutation and these integers and update the permutation. And for the rest of the slides, I will use the following notation. Sk is an initial permutation S after exactly k swaps have been executed on S. And J is the same, is the value of J after k swaps have been executed on S. And S to -1 means the inverse function of S, or the inverse permutation. So we got this for loop here, and in every iteration of the loop, 2 values in S are swapped. And we will have to look at the swaps which happens inside S. And in a WEP scenario, we know that the key used for a packet always consists of 3 bytes initialization vector and a secret root key, which means that an attacker always knows the first 3 bytes of the key, which is used to encrypt the packet, and he can therefore look at the first 3 swaps on the RC4 stream cipher, because the first 3 swaps which are executed here only depend on K0, K1, and K2, which are the first 3 bytes of the key, which are the initialization vector in WEP mode. And we must assume that the attacker sometimes knows a lot of key streams because he has sniffed in some packets in the network. And an attacker could, for example, compute this formula. And this one is interesting because in 2005, Klein could show that this formula has an interesting property because it tends to take the value of the next key byte a little bit more often than all other values which are possible. So this formula can have 256 possible values, and the probability that this one takes the value of the fourth of the next key byte is a little bit higher than all other values, which will be the first byte of the secret root key in a WEP scenario. And it's very easy to compute this formula. So we can find similar functions to determine the next key byte, to determine key byte I plus 1 if the first I key bytes of an RC4 key are known. And this is totally sufficient to break WEP, because what you can do is you can just capture a lot of packets, get a lot of key streams, and compute this formula very often. And you have a look at the results, and if you got a lot of packets, then one value, which will be the first secret key byte, will appear a little bit more often than all other values. So you can just, for example, take 100,000 packets, compute this formula, and then you will find out that there will be one value which appears a little bit more often, and this will be the value of your first secret key byte. And then you know always the first 4 key bytes, because the first 3 key bytes of all every packet is the initialization vector, and the fourth key byte is the first byte of the secret root key. And then you can start calculating the second byte of the root key. And this would be totally sufficient to break WEP much faster than Correct does. And we were able to extend it a little bit. We have found the following formula, which has a tendency to take the value of the sum of the first 2 secret key bytes of WEP a little bit more often than all other values, which means that you get the possibility to determine the sum of the first 2 key bytes and determine the first key byte. And after you know the sum of the first 2 key bytes and you know the first key byte, you can find the second key byte, because you can just subtract the first key byte from the sum, and then you get just K4, which is the second byte of your secret root key. And you can very efficiently compute this formula. And we can find similar functions which tend to take the values of the first 3, 4, 5, and 6 key bytes. Or alternatively, we can say if we know the first E key bytes, then we can find a function to determine the first I plus L key bytes of an RC4 key. And this is basically everything we did in our paper. We found these functions, and we wrote an implementation which just takes ARP traffic captured from a network. Then it generates key streams from this ARP traffic, and then it starts calculating the secret key of the network by just computing these formulas and taking the most often appearing value for each formula and then computing the secret key. There are some enhancements. For example, if you got a low number of packets, you can try alternative approaches. For example, you do not just take the most appearing value in these formulas. You take the most and the second most appearing values in these formulas and try to find out if perhaps one of these combinations result in the correct key. And in the last month, we wrote some other enhancements. For example, this can be used in a passive mode too. The first implementation we had was restricted to ARP packets, and now we can use IP packets which means it can be applied without injection to a network. And the whole code is so efficient that it can even be executed on a PDA or on a cell phone, because it takes perhaps 3 megabytes of main memory. And well, on this laptop it takes some seconds of CPU time, and on a PDA it takes less than a minute of CPU time. So you don't need big hardware to do that. And another enhancement is if you know that a key has only certain characters in it, you can skip some keys. For example, AVM chips, the hardware was web enabled by default, but they only use 10 out of 256 possible characters for every single key byte. So there are a lot of keys which are never used by AVM hardware, because these keys have other values. So you can skip such keys in your attack and just attack keys which have only ASCII numerical characters in it. And I have received a mail, I think 3 or 4 days ago, that some other people in Japan are now working on some enhancement of the attack. So you can expect that the number of packets required will go down a little bit. So perhaps we will see even faster attacks in the future on WEP, which are perhaps able to crack WEP with half the packet needed or so. But I don't got details on this attack. And basically this was all the theory. And for those of you which are interested in trying everything in practice, there will be a workshop on cracking WEP at 12:30 in the Wireless Village. This is a big green tent. If you go out there and half left, you will find it directly next to the Z-base. And all the implementations are now available in the AirCrack NG tool suite you can find at this URL. And but they are all the implementation which has all features I currently talked about is not yet released, so you will have to download the 1.0 dev version from the SVN server. There is a 0.9 version already released which has some of the basics implemented, but the 1.0 dev version of AirCrack NG has all features we have currently seen. So basically, basically this was it. So,
any questions?
Who has questions?
Yes, I have a question about ARP injection. I don't know if it's a little bit off topic, but how do you get the packets injected while you still don't have the correct key?
What exactly you are asking? How do I find an ARP packet to inject?
When you are re-injecting the ARP packets, you don't have problems that you don't have the key because you just used pre-captured packets?
Sorry, I don't understand the question. Could you repeat the question, please?
Okay. You want to generate traffic?
Yes.
But you don't have the key yet, and the only thing you have to do is just use pre-captured packets, or do you have some other tricks to get the package you inject accepted by the access point?
Basically, you got a lot of possibilities to generate traffic. The easiest way to generate traffic is the following. You passively sniff the network and you look for a packet which looks like an ARP request. You can easily find that packet because ARP requests have a constant size, and ARP requests go to the broadcast address of the network, and the destination address of a packet is not encrypted. So you just wait until a packet arrives, which goes to the broadcast address and has the characteristic size of an ARP packet. And then you just record this packet and send it back and back again to the network. And first, in a WEP network, there is no real broadcast traffic. So if a station tries to reach the broadcast address, the packet itself is relayed by the access point, which means that even nobody will answer to the, if nobody will answer to the request, the packet will get relayed and therefore get re-encrypted, and we can therefore generate traffic. And if we are lucky, this was a valid request, and the packet will arrive at the owner of this requested IP address, and he will respond to the packet, and this response will be relayed by the access point too, which means that in this case you got 3 new packets with every packet you send. You send a packet, it's relayed by the access point, which means you got 1 packet, then the correct receiver of the packet will answer to this packet, which means you get the 2nd packet, and the answer will be relayed by the access point again, which means you get the 3rd packet. And this is the best way to generate traffic in the network. And you could use some other methods too, for example, generating your own ARP request for any kind of station and just inject this request into the network. After you have discovered a long enough key stream, you can send arbitrary packets.
Any more questions? Is there any more questions? Do you want to put your hand up?
Is it possible to create some traffic even if there's nobody online in the wireless network? Is it possible to create some traffic in the network even if there's nobody online?
Even if there is what?
Nobody online, there are no other clients.
You mean you could just get an access point but no clients connected to it?
Exactly.
Okay. Yes, this is sometimes possible because a lot of access points, for example, got any kind of UPnP or another protocol enabled which uses broadcast traffic to announce the access point. So the first thing you can do is you can just join the network with your computer because the protocol for joining the network requires no encryption at all. So that means your computer can even join a network which is encrypted and you don't know the key. The second thing you do is you can just wait for a packet sent to the broadcast address, for example, by the router or by the access point for announcing itself that it is the router or for doing some other stuff. And this sometimes works in a real-world scenario. And after that, you can use the fragmentation attack to build a very large key stream, and then you can just start sending packets which are then relayed to by the access point and generate traffic. So cracking a network even with no clients is at least sometimes possible.
Any more questions? Sorry. Could you hold your hand up if you want?
Here's a question.
You said the initialization vector is sent over the network without encryption. So my question is, how often is this done? Is it just done when a client connects first time to the network, or in which cases can I sniff the initialization vector of a client?
You are asking how easily it is to detect this attack. For example, with an IDS system. Well, the active version of the attack, which generates traffic by sending ARP requests into the network, is easily detectable because this will generate ARP traffic, and you can see this traffic pattern even with usual intrusion detection system, because usually you don't get 800 ARP requests per second on a normal network. So detecting this attack would be easy, but we wrote a modified version of the attack which allows us to use IP traffic. So what you can do is you can just put your antenna up, or let's say you just plug in your wireless card and you don't send any packet. And you just record all packets which are transmitted over the network, and you just guess that these packets are usual IP version 4 packets. And this allows you to generate enough key stream to calculate the key, and without being detected. You just don't send any packet, and you just receive packets, and then you calculate the key. You can decrypt everything, and there is no way to detect this attack except wondering why a car is parking near your house or something like this. So you got basically no chance to detect it. What, of course, can be detected later is if you got the key and you use the network, of course, the owner of the network can see your traffic on the network. But if you're just interested in decrypting traffic on the network, no chance of detection.
Anybody else? Want to put your hand up? Oh, cool. Thank you.
Okay. Test. Okay. So what's the impact in terms of the number of packets required for with arbitrary IP packets versus ARP packets?
You're asking for how many packets to capture?
Yes. Is it considerably more or?
Well, the exact number of packets just depends a little bit on your luck, and well, I don't know if it's possible to do it with far less packets. Perhaps we will see an enhancement in the future, but if you got less than 20,000 packets captured, your chance will be below 5%.
No. Excuse me. So the question was, when you use arbitrary IP packets, you have less plain text, less non-plain text. So what is the impact? Do you need 200,000 packets or 1 million or 2 million versus 50,000, let's say?
Okay. When I capture ARP, when I capture IP packets, IP version 4 packets, I cannot completely determine the key stream used. I got mostly 2 bytes missing, but the number of packets required in passive mode should not be so much higher, because perhaps we need 40,000 packets for 50% success probability with ARP traffic. Perhaps with IP it's more than 50,000 or 60,000, but it won't increase the number very much.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, wow, loads today.
I know it's not about the presentation, but I have heard that today is a special meeting of all of us because of the new hacker paragraph that is put in law today. And we set to meet at 15 o'clock outside, 3 o'clock outside. I don't know if it's still on, but I think we should meet out there or look for more information.
So basically you want to know how the new paragraph 202C affects ACREC? Or at least affects users of ACREC?
We had a little discussion yesterday, and we planned to do a little demonstration to stand all outside and make a big photograph all like this. So on the way to prison.
Well, the question is, well, about 2C, I must have to say we had Brigitte Zypris at our university, which at least told us that this is only against bad guys, and of course universities and security researchers won't be affected by this at all. But I don't know how much we can believe that, but we haven't reacted so far. That means we, at least for our further cryptographics research, we did not really look at 2Z, but I'm very much against this new paragraph, and if I can support any Any publication that shows that it is bad, I will support it.
Any more questions? Cool.
Okay. Hello? Has web sort of a session, or is every package encrypted and decrypted, unique and independently of each others?
What exactly?
Has web sort of a session, so every package sent over the network depends on another package sent before?
You mean how many packets can be sent over a network?
No, I mean if every package you send over a network has sort of a key which is used to decrypt the next package which is sent.
How many packets are lost?
No, session-based. Is web session-based?
Sorry, voice quality is extremely bad here. But I will repeat the question for the audience.
Ja, ich frage jetzt einfach auf Deutsch. Ist dieses Web einfach session-basierend? Also, dass in jedem Paket so eine Art Session mitkommt?
So. Wie, du verstehst du nichts. Was willst du?
Ob Web session-basierend ist?
Session-basierend. Okay, the question was if there's something like a session in the WEP protocol. Basically, there is not. WEP usually works like the following. A client arrives at a network. It sends a packet to the access point that it would like to join the network. This is acknowledged by the access point, and then the client is in the network. And he doesn't have to do key exchange or anything like this. He just knows the secret root key, and every time he sends a packet, he chooses a more or less random initialization vector, generates a per packet key, and just sends the packet. And in WPA, you got something like sessions. So a client joins the network and it exchanges keys with the access point. And after that, he has a key for some minutes and he uses this key, and perhaps later he will exchange the key again. But there is nothing like this in WEP. So you can basically reuse a packet you've once captured for once and for all. So there's no time limit, no session expiration or so. Basically, there's nothing like a session in WEP.
Any more? I think we should give this man a round of applause for an amazing lecture after all the technical difficulties he's had today. And thank you to very much the people who gave him the laptop. Well, I'm going to clap if no one else.